Namaskar. I would like to thank the organizers for having given me this wonderful opportunity to stand before you and share a few thoughts of mine. Well, I must also say one more thing. They have recognized what my own children refuse to accept. They have recognized to be still young by having included me in this youth session. Thank you very much for the same. Well, before saying something with regard to my own topic, I would like to add in line with what others have been talking. The gentleman here referred to the mathematical formula approximation of the circumference where pi is almost equivalent to 3. Well, it is there in the Vedic literature itself, I would say. Saptasya sanparidhayaha tris sapta samidha kritaha. Samidhi means circumference. Paridhi means circumference. Samidhi refers to the diameter. So, sapta paridhi is equal to 3 sapta samidhi. You cancel 7 on either side, you will get samidhi, paridhi, circumference is equal to 3 times samidhi, that is the same formula as pi d. The same approximation that we have resorted to in this particular paper. Well, I would like to talk on the influence of the Vedic literature on Indian music, particularly the South Indian musical compositions. That was my topic. I have divided my topic into 3 sections. One about the Vedic gods and goddesses represented in our musical compositions, and the element of bhakti in Vedic literature as well as bhakti in musical compositions, and the philosophy other than bhakti in Vedic literature as well as our musical compositions. I don't think I will have time to elaborate on all these 3 sections. So I would like to start with the 3rd section, namely the philosophical element in the Vedas as well as in the musical compositions. Well, bhakti, just one word about bhakti I must say. Bhakti is prevalent in the Vedic literature, that is very well known to us, and it is also quite prevalent in our musical compositions of the South. Tyagaraja has Sangeeta Jnanamu Bhakti Vina Sanmargamu Galade. Without bhakti, there is no music. And music in our Indian context is not just meant for entertainment. Coupled with bhakti-oriented lyrics, music produces an ennobling effect. And it elevates the human mind. It transposes the listener to an entirely different world, a world of liberation, emancipation. And it produces the supreme joy, which is the essence of all our life for that matter, the Rasa for that matter. As we have said in the Vedic literature itself, as we see in the Vedic literature itself, Supreme Brahman himself is of the form of Rasa, Raso Vaisaha. Well, the language of the musical compositions of South India is another point that has to be highlighted here. Sanskrit, if not Vedic Sanskrit, is dominant in South Indian musical compositions. Most of 99% of Muthuswami Dikshitar's songs are in Sanskrit. And even the Telugu compositions of Tyagaraja and Shyama Shastrigal and Sri Annamacharya, and the Kannada compositions of Purandaradasa, the Tamil compositions of Papanasam Shivan, and the compositions of Swati Tirunal, they are all heavily influenced by Sanskrit and Indian philosophy and Vedic philosophy for that matter. Well, we find that our composers have not only sung in praise of our gods and goddesses, it is quite expected. They have also concentrated on the Jnana-kanda portion of the Vedas. We see quite a few examples. The Vedas say, as we all know, Ekam Sad Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, the one that has manifested itself into many. And the same idea has been reflected in the Upanishads also. Well, in the Vedas we have, particularly in the Purusha Sukta and Asadiya Sukta, a lot of philosophical ideas, and the tradition continues in the Upanishads. Yes sarvajyas sarvavid yasya jnanamayam tapaha tasmadetat brahma namarupam annam cha jayate, etc. in the Mundaka Upanishad. And then we have statements like Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. I have to rush through. And we have yato va imani bhutani jayante yena jatani jivanti yat prayanti abhisambhishanti, etc. in the Taittiriya. And then again we have Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asita, etc. Ekameva Dvitiyam. So all these philosophical ideas are reflected in our musical compositions also. We have statements of Mayant Prakritim Vidyat Mayanantu Maheshwaram in the Shvetashvatara. Same idea is reflected in the Bhagavad Gita also. Aham sarvasya prabhavaha mattaha sarvam pravartate. And then again these ideas are reflected in the kritis of the composers also. The idea that everyone is same in the eyes of God is reflected in the Upanishads and also in the Bhagavad Gita for that matter. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastini Shuchi Chaiva Svapakecha Panditaha Samadarshinaha. And then we have, I am rushing through, the well-known Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Ayam Atma Brahma, etc. What is interesting is that these ideas are coupled with bhakti and music in our musical compositions. Well, there is also a discussion whether musical compositions, music should have compositions at all. But in South Indian context, the text, music, the musical compositions are as much important as the music, the tune, etc. According to Advaita, the Supreme Brahman is Saguna and possessor of all auspicious qualities, but Advaita advocates Nirguna Brahman. The Supreme Brahman is above, transcending all these qualities for that matter. Saint Tyagaraja says, for him Rama is all, he is Parabrahman. And then in another, in a song, Anuraga Mule, he says, Saguna Dhyanamu Pani Saukhyam. There is supreme joy in contemplating on the Saguna aspect of the Lord. In another song belonging to the Prahalad Bhakta Vijaya, an opera composed by Tyagaraja, he says that he prefers to treat Saguna as well as Nirguna aspects of the Lord on equal footing. Saguna, Nirguna Mula, Samagamamu, Brahma, etc. In another kriti he says, Advaita Samrajyamilu Sad Vairagyam Nidhi. Vairagya is renunciation, that is the treasure of the Advaita philosophy, Nirguna philosophy. In another famous song, he says, where is the joy? Is it through the Dvaita philosophy, the non-dual philosophy, or dualistic philosophy, or a non-dual philosophy, Dvaita or Advaita? Dvaita Musukama, Advaita Musukama, he reflects in the Riti Gauda Raga. Then in another song he says, let my inner consciousness, which is the witness to all the activities, explain to me in detail whether Dvaita contributes to joy or Advaita contributes to joy. He recognizes the importance of the inner consciousness. As we see Kalidasa himself saying, Satam hi sandeha padeshu vastushu pramanam antakarana pravurtayaha. When we have doubt with regard to a particular thing, your own inner voice gives you a solution. So in song Paramatmudu Galade, he says, Sugunamulo, Vigunamulo, what does it matter? Whether it is the Supreme Being, Saguna or Nirguna, doesn't matter for a devotee for that matter. It is immaterial for a person who is immersed in bhakti for that matter, or immersed in one's own self. A similar idea is reflected in the Ashtavakra Gita for that matter. It says, Kvadharmaha, Kvacha Kamaha, Kvachartaha, Kvacha Vivekata, Kvadvaitam, Kvacha Advaitam. Same idea as we see in Tyagaraja. Swamahim nistitasya me, when I am reflected in my own Mahima, then where is the difference between Dvaita and Advaita? It transcends all those things. Well, in Muthuswami Dikshitar's songs also, we have a lot of philosophical ideas, Advaita concepts, Visishtadvaita concepts, Bhakti element, all these are reflected. For example, in one of his Kamalamba Kritis, he says, Shri Kamalambikaya Katakshitoham. I'm sorry, I don't have time, nor am I a musician, and therefore I cannot sing for you, but I can just rush through. He says, Shri Kamalambikaya Katakshitoham Satchidananda Paripurna Brahmasmi, because of God's grace. Even if you want to attain Advaita state, God's grace is necessary. And therefore he recognizes himself to be part of the Supreme Self and full of Sat, Chit and Ananda, existence, knowledge and joy, supreme joy. So he says, Paripurnam Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, same concept. Then exemplifying the Jiva-Brahma-Aikya concept, he says, Paripurna Brahmasmi, on the model of Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi. Then in the Mahavakya Tattvamasi, the term Tat refers to the Supreme Being and Tvam refers to the Jivatman. The Mahavakya implies that the Jivatman is not different from the Supreme Brahman in the ultimate level, in the absolute level, not in the Vyavaharika stage, of course. And then the Tat refers to the Paramatman. It acquires that meaning through the concept of Lakshana, the implied sense. And this occurs in one of the compositions of Muthuswami Dikshitar. He says, Saptaswara Matrika Rupini, Samsara Dukkha Shamanim, Dhaninim, Tatpada Lakshyartha Rupinim. Tatpada Lakshyartha Rupinim. The term Tat in Tattvamasi refers to the Parabrahman through Lakshyartha, to amplification. So, this again in the compositions of Sadashiva Brahmendra is full of Advaita concept. For example, he says, Sarvam Brahmamayam, Sarvam Brahmamayam, Kim Vachaniyam, Kim Avachaniyam, Kim Pataniyam, Kim Apataniyam, and Sarvatra Sada Hamsa Dhyanam. He says again, Sarvam Brahmamayam, all this. Sarvam Kalu Idam Brahma, same Vedic idea is reflected in this Kriti. It is only Brahman which appears many, like one moon appearing as many in the vessels filled with water. In a semi-dark state, a pillar may appear as a man. Once the light is brought, then we realize the truth. Likewise, in the world what we see is only in the mithya appearance, the Maya. But when true knowledge dawns, there will be the realization then that Supreme Being is but one. So he explains this concept in the song, Tadvad Jivatvam Brahmani Tadvad Jivatvam. I am not going into the rest of the song for want of time. And for those who want to attain the liberation or realization for that matter, Shama Damadi Sadhana Sampat, Shama, Dama, Uparati, all these things are very important. And this is again emphasized in one of Sadashiva Brahmendra's song, Chinta Nasti Kila Tesham, Shama Dama Karuna Sampurnanam, Sadhu Samagama Sankirnanam, etc. So all these songs are not only coupled with music and bhakti, but also with the philosophical element for that matter. Ganapati, I will just briefly outline how some of the gods and goddesses are represented in Vedic literature as well as in our musical compositions. Well, Ganapati cult is very famous. We can trace the origin of Ganapati to Vedic literature. We have famous mantra we have been listening for the past 2 days. Ganana antva Ganapatim havamahe kavim kavinam upamashravastamam jeshtaradam brahmanam brahmanaspata anashinam. So this same Ganapati cult is reflected in the musical composition. Most of the compositions begin with, most of the concerts for that matter, they begin with a Ganapati song for that matter essentially. And most of the composers also have composed at least 1 or 2 songs on Ganapati for that matter. And we have Muthuswami Dikshitar's famous song, Sri Gananatham Bhajare, Chit Para Shakti Yutam, Naga Yajna Sutradaram, Nadalayanandakaram, Agamade Sanutam, Akila Veda Pujitam, etc. etc. And then we have our Purandaradasa also singing on Ganapati, a very beautiful song which is taught as the first song for children when they are introduced into music for that matter. Lambodara Lakumikara Ambasuta Amara Vinuta. What is interesting here is that in order to make his song very simple, the author has very cleverly mixed Prakrit in addition to in the midst of Samskrita. So therefore he avoids the word Lakshmi, it may be difficult for children to pronounce, and therefore he uses a Lakumi Kira, is a Prakritized form. And then similarly the concept of Guru is very important. We all know Acharya Devo Bhava in the Vedic literature, and most of the composers have composed songs on the Guru. We have Tyagaraja's famous song Guru Leka Etuvanti Guniki, etc. And Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar in fact sang his first song only on Guru, Sri Natha Adi Guru Ho Jayati. And then we also have many other composers, almost all the composers have composed songs on Guru for that matter. And Rudra Shiva. Shiva and Vishnu, as we all know, were minor divinities during Vedic period. Indra, Agni, Yama, Varuna, they were the famous divinities. But in spite of it, we have profound aspects of Shiva being brought out in the Rudra Prashna for that matter. Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya Namaste Astu Dhanmane Bahubhyam Tate Namaha, etc. Namostu Bhagavan Vishweshwaraya Mahadevaya Trayambakaya Tripurantakaya Trikagni Kalaya Kalagni Rudraya Neelakantaya Mrityunjayaya Sarveshwaraya Sadashivaya Sriman Mahadevaya Namaha. All these aspects are brought out very effectively in our musical compositions also, particularly Muthuswami Dikshitar. He has visited a number of Shiva Kshetras almost all over the country and has sung on the several aspects of the deity in each and every temple. He refers to the Sthala Vriksha, he refers to the Sthala Purana, he refers to the deity and its very beautiful aspects. He refers to the geographical area, he refers to the seasonal worship, many other elements and the tantric aspect for that matter. All these are brought out, in addition to of course his philosophy and bhakti in his musical compositions, fully loaded with all these informations. Well, Tyagaraja is also a devotee of Shiva. He says, he has sung, say, Nada Tanum Anisham, a Sanskrit song. Very few songs are there of Tyagaraja in Sanskrit. Nada Tanum Anisham Shankaram, Namami Te Manasa Shirasa, etc. And Muthuswami Dikshitar has sung Tyagaraja Yoga Vaibhavam. Very interesting piece here in which we have the techniques of Gopucha and the reverse of it. For example, we have Yoga Vaibhavam, Agaraja Yoga Vaibhavam, Raja Yoga Vaibhavam, Yoga Vaibhavam, Vaibhavam Vam. Like in the rocket technique, I would say, because as the rocket is fired, one after the other, the rockets are, dropped off. And then again, the opposite of it, something like a telescopic thing. We find Tattva Prakasham, Sakala Tattva Prakasham, Shiva Shakyadi Sakala Tattva Prakasham. And then here many other songs on Shiva for that matter, Akshaya Linga Vibho, etc. They are quite famous of Muthuswami Dikshitar. And the interesting aspect of this Tyagaraja song that I refer to, Nadatanu Manusham, is that he says, from his 5 phases, the Sarta Swaras arose. Ishana, Tatpurusha, Aghora, Vamadeva, Sadyojata, as we know, these are the 5 phases. Sadyojata, Adi, Panchavaktra, etc. We may get a doubt. He could have said from 7, at least one can imagine. If he can imagine 5, why not 7? Lord Shiva as possessing 7 phases and the 7 swaras emanating from them. Why should we say 5 swaras and then 7 swaras emanated? 5 phases and 7 swaras emanated from them. As we all know in music, the Shadja and Panchama are somewhat fixed. Any of the reeds in an instrument, for example in harmonium, can be taken as Shadja, and the 5th note from that will be the Panchama. And for these are fixed, we need not refer to them. Any of the notes can be taken as. But the scale, in the fixed scale, the other 5 swaras have to be fixed depending upon this Shadja and Panchama. And therefore he says Panchavaktra, and therefore that is enough. So this, and then about Durga, we have Durga Sukta, we have a lot of Kamalamba's Kritis, and Dharini Telesikunti of Tyagaraja, many compositions on Devi, and then we have Sri Subramanyaya Namaste. And in Vedic literature, there is a reference to, an indirect reference to the splitting of the Krauncha mountain. There is no reference to Kumara or Subramanya as a direct deity, but we have this splitting of the Krauncha in an indirect fashion. Perhaps that is an indication of Subramanya's conquest, his exploit. And then we have a lot of compositions on Tamil compositions, particularly on Subramanya, Muruga for that matter. And then Vishnu, of course, was a minor deity. Then later on, he became an important deity for that matter. Idam Vishnu Vichakrame Tredha Nidhade Padam, we have the Vedic Sutras. And similarly, the 10 avatars, it is an indirect reference to the Vamana avatara as I see, the 3 steps. And we have reference to the several avatars of Vishnu and about the several aspects of Vishnu in our musical compositions. And then, well, let me rush through. And then about Lakshmi also we have the Vedic Sutras and many compositions on Lakshmi for that matter. So this is, I would like to conclude here by saying that we have been having a continuous tradition. The Vedic philosophy, the Vedic tradition, Vedic gods and goddesses, similarly in the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, and it has transcended and it has descended up to the musical compositions also, where we'll find the gods and goddesses, Vedic gods and goddesses being extolled, and the bhakti element being presented, and the Vedic philosophy also being reflected in the music compositions. That is where our greatness lies, our tradition lies, and our culture resides.